Asperger also observed a strong attachment to places in autistics, noting that autistic children take longer to get over homesickness than normal children. There is an emotional bonding to the routines and objects at home. Maybe this is because of the lack of strong emotional attachments to people. Learning social skills. Over the last 10 years, I have gained additional insights into how people relate to each other. I learned that I am what I do instead of what I feel. In my life, I have replaced emotional complexity with intellectual complexity. People on the spectrum who are happy have friends with their same interests. Computer programmers are happy when they are with other programmers, and they can talk about programming. All my life, I have been an observer, and I have always felt like someone who watches from the outside. I could not participate in the social interactions of high school life. First of all, I could not understand why clothes were so important when there were much more interesting things to think about and do in the science lab. Electronics and experimental psychology were much more intriguing than clothes. My peers spent hours standing around talking about jewelry or some other topic with no real substance. What did they get out of this? I just did not fit in. I never fit in with the crowd, but I had a few friends who were interested in the same things, such as skiing and riding horses. Friendship always revolved around what I did rather than who I was. Even today, personal relationships are something I don't really understand. I've remained celibate because doing so helps me to avoid the many complicated social situations that are too difficult for me to handle. For most people with autism, physical closeness is as much a problem as not understanding basic social behaviors.
So I felt really triggered when this was shared in a group. Well, it's just not correct to state it like this. You see, many autistics, myself included, think in pictures or some form of video, and that's just totally different from verbal thinking. Calls herself an expert, but at the same time totally ignores facts. There was no reaction to my comments or anybody else's comments. And this was shared a year ago. So far, post is still up. So, and this is exactly what happens if you are invalidated, even gaslighted by your own therapist or somatic experience practitioner. Then you think, what's wrong with you? But you just display autistic traits. You may be a visual thinker. And therefore, I think getting a diagnosis is really, really important in terms of socializing, because otherwise you will always question yourself. You will think something is wrong with you. But once you know you are autistic, that is a whole paradigm shift. And then you no longer blame yourself for being socially awkward. It's incredibly important to at least self-diagnose and do your research.
Would have written a book about women and girls like 10 years ago?
I don't know that there will be much interest. I mean, interestingly, a lot of the most prolific writers have always been women. There's Temple Grandin, there's Leanne Holiday-Willy, Donna Williams. It's always been women that have been sharing their stories. But strangely enough, it sort of seems that nobody ever kind of put two and two together and said, well, how come we have this plethora of women writing about their experiences, but actually in the real world, we're just not seeing that many women being diagnosed, certainly in those times. I would have been, well, I don't think, I mean, even the book I wrote, which was just a couple of years ago, I sought out every single research paper I could possibly find that looked at gender, that looked at women, that looked at anything to do with comparisons between boys and girls in order to do as comprehensive a literature review as I could. I also want a bit more background, a bit more theory, a bit more strategies and stuff to go with it.
So this is the book they are talking about, and it really helped me the most to understand myself. Later on, I read Temple Grandin's books, one after the other, and this added to the knowledge that I already had. But I realized I was a visual thinker, which is really different. But really, Sarah Hendricks' book about female autism, that was the one that made me realize, oh gosh, yeah, I'm autistic too. And that was the big paradigm shift, the big aha moment, and all the puzzle pieces fell into place. Then also, nobody can tell you otherwise or shame you. This is a very good book, Odd Girl Out by Laura James. And this is exactly the issue. There is often some difficulty expressing yourself, and then that's why you can use book quotes or a melody from a song or song lyrics or a scene from a movie to just demonstrate what is going on if you cannot express yourself. That's one part, and then the other part is if you are a visual thinker and not a verbal thinker, then your process is totally different. That's exactly the point. Don't mix apples and oranges. Attachment theory doesn't apply to autistics. That withdrawal is often sensory based. You have a meltdown, you withdraw. That's common sense, because you can't tolerate anymore all the noise, everything that's going on around you, the sounds, the smells, people moving, everything. It's too much. So you have to be alone. And then this becomes a physical need. And so your nervous system can calm down. That's the only way. Withdraw into silence, often even darkness. That's how you recover and get your batteries back up. And no matter how well you eat, there's a point where you just need a break from all the noise. This is how I feel when there are too many people around me. This constant chatter. So I need the silence. And that has nothing to do with attachment theory. It's a physical need. The system needs silence to recover. It's not from trauma. It's a physical need. And if a therapist doesn't know about visual thinking, he or she will just not get it. And that's where invalidation can happen. And it's so important to be aware of that and know you are a visual thinker or pattern thinker. Needs to be communicated to a therapist or somatic experience practitioner, because the top-down will not really work. And this is where things get complicated. There might be some neglect, trauma, and then some kids tend to be almost autistic, but then they recover. But that's not true autism. That's different. And again, this is not based on trauma.
In order to survive, members of a prey species, such as cattle or sheep, have to be ever vigilant and flee when they spot a predator. Cattle and sheep have supersensitive hearing, an acute sense of smell. They are much more sensitive to high-pitched sounds than people and can hear sounds that are outside the range of human hearing. High-pitched sounds tend to be more disturbing to them than low-pitched sounds.
So you see, the low-pitched sounds are really calming.
And starting on E, you're playing an E minor.
And high-pitched sounds are rather annoying and stressful. Huge.
Tom Camp, a USDA researcher in Texas, found that a loud bell on an outdoor telephone caused a calf's heart rate to jump suddenly by 50 to 70 beats per minute. It's unlikely that anyone but me would have noticed that the sounds that upset cattle are the same kinds of sounds that are unbearable to many autistic children with overly sensitive hearing.
This is very true for me. Some high-pitched sounds like a train hissing, or in general train noises, a train stopping, that screeching noise.
Zürich, Ihre nächsten Verbindungen: Intercity 1 nach Bern, Lausanne, Genf, Flughafen, Abfahrt 18:32 Uhr, Gleis 9.
Or if you have dishes clashing together, that noise, that's very painful. And that's when you try to avoid it. You just cover your ears or you run away.
A sudden hissing, similar to that caused by the air brakes on a semi-truck, will trigger a strong startle reaction in both calves and cattle. When calves hear this sound, they instantly lay their ears against their heads and back up to get away from the source of the noise. Like cattle, a person with autism has hypervigilant senses. Even today, a person whistling in the middle of the night will cause my heart to race. High-pitched sounds are the worst. P.B. McConnell and his colleague J.R. Bylas in Germany found that dog trainers use high-pitched intermittent sounds to stimulate a dog to do something like fetch, while low sounds are used to make it stop, such as saying whoa to a horse. In tame animals, the high-pitched sounds have a mild activating effect, but in wild animals and autistic children, they set off a massive fear reaction.
I can't say this enough. I had many debates about this. Fact is, it just didn't work for me. As long as I was vegan, I had depression, anxiety, muscle pain, joint pain, back pain, digestive issues, way more sensitive to noises, to people, sensory overload. I had more meltdowns. Only after I changed my diet, the pain went away after 3 months. And I was really struggling before that as a vegan while doing this somatic experience therapy with a good practitioner. I must say, I'm sure she is really very experienced and knowledgeable. But as a vegan, you just can't cognitively function as well as when you include a lot of meat and animal fat. System needs that, especially as an autistic. The brain needs fat, animal fats. Only then you will improve. You have to change your diet.
Begins with a wiring problem, which leads to imbalances in serotonin. The autistic individual ends up with too little serotonin in the brain and too much everywhere else. Since brain serotonin runs the socializing networks, this shortage creates shortfalls in the ability to interact with others. Serotonin is a morphogen. It helps shape the brain. Adequate levels of serotonin must be present during the brain's development to ensure everything is wired correctly. Genetics definitely contributes to the crossed wiring, but something about the environment in which the baby is developing is underwriting the genes, ultimately interfering with the normal wiring process. In autism, lots of some things have been implicated. Inflammation, antibodies, too little thyroid, too little vitamin D.
Important vitamin D is to each and every one of us, and so many people don't even know about it today, and they know or they're very deficient in vitamin D. And the good news is it's about the easiest deficiency to correct. And not only is it easy, it's inexpensive, it's safe, and moreover, it's effective.
The older you get, the less your skin will be able to get vitamin D from sunlight. And I had many of those symptoms, feeling tired all the time as a vegan, sleepy, exhausted. I wasn't getting sick very often, not really, no. But then I had intestinal issues, definitely. And the back pain, of course. Oh gosh, yeah. That was really quite strong. And I was getting worried about what will happen in the future, because it wasn't getting better, whatever I did. And then it was all vitamin D deficiency. Now I don't have that anymore. Yeah, sensitive teeth, Hair loss too, the chronic muscle pain, yes, that too. Chronic hip pain, and just that weird muscle pain. And no stretching, no massaging, nothing would help. Best was rest, but it didn't go away. Again, just adding vitamin D helped. Yeah, and the depression went away. Slow wound healing is now better. Headaches, migraines. Yeah, just take vitamin D.
That scientists really started looking at the correlation between vitamin D and autism.
So those are just a few studies on vitamin D you can look up for yourselves. I think the vitamin D plays really a huge role. It's important to have a larger intake of vitamin D, and there are many animal foods that are rich in vitamin D. For example, fish oil. And fish oil, in my case, really helps for anxiety. Another alternative is camel milk. If you can't tolerate dairy from cows, not even goats or sheep, then go for camel milk. I can really highly recommend it. Those are the foods that are rich in vitamin D. And for me, I also take those supplements from Vital Proteins, and they have the K2 as well. So I really like this supplement. And then of course, eating a lot of animal foods like fish, oysters, and different kinds of meat. And yes, I dare, because meat heals. It's really the way to go. And it can't be said enough that diet has a huge impact. This is in particular also true for autistics. When you switch to a high-fat, meat-based way of eating, it's really a game changer. It's amazing. And for me, it's about life quality improvement. I will always have the autistic traits, but feeling overall much better, feeling energetic, not being tired, not being in pain, not having any digestive issues, not being depressed. This is huge. Your quality of life is so much better. You cognitively function much better. This is my final word about it. This was my experience. So, a diet change first and see what happens. Reduce your carbs. Eat meat and lots of animal fats and see what happens. And then if you feel like it, you can still do some therapy work.